My parents didn't whisper it. They didn't hesitate, didn't soften their voices, didn't even disguise the contempt behind the words. They said it with the same calm certainty they used when discussing grocery lists or weather forecasts. The greatest gift you can give your brother on his wedding day is not being there at all. The words rolled off my mother's tongue as she folded her napkin, like she was politely ending a conversation rather than detonating a bomb at the family dinner table. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type interested in the comments, and I will give you a heart. My father didn't frown or blink. He just nodded as if my absence was a logical solution everyone should have seen coming. And Dorian, my brother, didn't defend me. He didn't shift uncomfortably or clear his throat or even pretend to be conflicted. He just kept scrolling on his phone like he'd been waiting for them to say it out loud. That was the moment the air in the room changed. Conversations fell apart mid-sentence. Lisa's hand froze on her wine glass. The soft clatter of cutlery from other tables around us grew louder, like the universe was giving me a moment to react. But I didn't crumble, not this time. I didn't plead or protest or try to mend the damage like I had spent my entire life doing. Instead, something inside me, something quiet and tired and long ignored, finally snapped free. I pushed back my chair, feeling the weight of every sacrifice I had made for this family gather itself into one final, steady breath. And as I walked away from that table, from that house, from the version of myself they expected me to be, I felt the first hint of a life I hadn't yet imagined. But before the collapse of their perfect wedding, before the frantic phone calls, the public humiliation, the unraveling of every piece of entitlement they had built their lives on, you need to understand how I became the invisible daughter who planned everything and received nothing. How I became the person they relied on for survival, convenience, and emotional labor, while pretending I never existed at all. My name is Luna Hart, and for most of my 32 years, I confused loyalty with love. I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, in a home that always reflected one undeniable truth. The center of gravity in our family was not shared. It belonged entirely to my younger brother, Dorian. My mother, Mara, had a way of praising him that made the walls glow. When he spoke, even if he was wrong, she leaned in like his words could part seas. My father, Colin, treated him like a small sun around which we all were expected to orbit. I, on the other hand, was the shadow that moved between the shelves of our small family grocery store, picking up the pieces they didn't see or didn't want to handle. My accomplishments never registered with the same intensity. If Dorian passed a basic class, it was a household celebration. If I closed a major marketing contract, my mother would blink and say, "Oh, that's nice," before launching into a story about how Dorian had impressed his professors again. For years, I clung to the idea that if I worked hard enough, if I was competent, loyal, helpful, they would eventually see me. They never did. When the store fell into financial trouble a few years ago, my mother called me crying, saying they would lose everything. I had, at that moment, a career-changing contract worth $40,000 sitting in my inbox, but the guilt in her voice wrapped itself around my throat. I canceled the contract within the hour and poured myself into resurrecting the store. I redesigned their branding, wrote ads, begged vendors for extensions, ran the register, stocked shelves, and handled the books. For months, not one person thanked me. Not one. And when the store was finally stable again, when customers returned and the shelves were full and the panic in their eyes faded, my mother clasped her hands, smiling like she had discovered a brilliant solution. "We've decided," she said, "that Dorian should take over the store. He just has the head for leadership." Dorian had done nothing. He hadn't stepped foot into the store except to grab snacks on his way to work. But he was the son, the heir, the chosen one. I felt the crack then, small but deep. It widened over the next several months as the wedding planning began. They didn't ask if I wanted to help. They simply assigned me the job. Venue scouting, budgeting, vendor management, invitation design, floral arrangements, ceremony structure, every detail was handed to me like I was their free event planner instead of their daughter. I squeezed client work into early mornings and late nights. I drained $10,000 of my savings into deposits because every time I mentioned a budget, my mother would sniff and say, "Don't embarrass the family, Luna." Dorian would smirk and add, "Try not to mess this up." Every time I succeeded, even when I secured discounted packages, negotiated upgrades, or found creative alternatives, they barely acknowledged it. They expected perfection, silence, and obedience. And I delivered until I couldn't, until the day everything snapped. The catalyst wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a fight or a disaster or a ruined plan. It was a simple dinner, a meal of roasted chicken, the same one my mother made whenever she wanted to pretend the family was still whole. I had spent the entire day juggling vendors, fixing timeline issues, and resolving yet another last-minute urgency from Dorian. But instead of gratitude, they handed me new demands: lobster, premium champagne, and overpriced photographer from Pittsburgh. I explained calmly that there was no money left, that I had already poured my savings into their dream wedding, that I could not give more. My mother leaned forward, eyes sharp as a blade. My father folded his napkin. Dorian smirked. And the sentence that would end everything fell from my mother's lips without hesitation or remorse. "The greatest gift you can give your brother's wedding is you vanishing from this family forever." My father nodded. Dorian kept scrolling. They meant it. Every word. So I left. And that was the moment their perfect wedding began to unravel, piece by piece, decision by decision, until the day they realized the daughter they dismissed was the one holding everything together. And without me, nothing worked. The night I walked out, I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't call Mason or Shirley or anyone who might have told me I was doing the right thing. I simply walked away. Calm, steady, almost eerily quiet inside. It felt like my ribs had been holding back a tide for years, and suddenly the water had gone still. Erie's air was cool, a little damp, the kind that clings to your skin and tells you the seasons are about to shift. I sat in my car for a long time before turning the key, staring at the glow of the porch light, the same one I'd replaced last year when my parents didn't bother to call an electrician. A small, bitter smile tugged at me. Even the house had relied on me more than they ever did. When I finally drove away, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to see them stepping outside, calling after me, pretending to care only because their wedding planner, me, was leaving. They didn't come outside anyway. Of course they didn't. By the time I reached my small studio apartment, my shoulders felt lighter, as if some invisible harness had finally snapped. I dropped my suitcase on the floor and stood in the middle of the room, breathing in the scent of my own space, a mix of eucalyptus, laundry detergent, and quiet. My phone buzzed on and off through the night. Messages from my mother first, sharp and condescending, even in text form. "Grow up, Luna," thought being dramatic. "You're ruining everything." Then my father, "You need to fix this. This is your responsibility. You will come back tomorrow." Then a final one from Dorian, "You better not screw up my wedding." I didn't reply to a single message. Silence felt cleaner than explaining myself to people who had never listened. The following morning, I woke with clarity, not anger, not spite, just clarity. A decision had already formed inside me long before I opened my eyes. I made tea, pulled out my laptop, and opened every wedding file I had created: invoices, contracts, deposit confirmations, vendor emails. I had built this entire wedding from the ground up. Every piece of it existed because I made it exist, and I could unmake it. Not as revenge, not as punishment, but as a boundary no one believed I was capable of drawing. I began with the caterer. When I called, the coordinator answered cheerfully, clearly remembering how meticulously I'd worked with her over the past months. "Is everything okay?" she asked when I told her I needed to cancel. "Everything is fine," I said. "It's simply no longer my event." She hesitated before speaking again. "There will be cancellation fees." "That's fine." She wasn't expecting that response. You could hear it in her silence. Next, the florist. I apologized for the short notice, told her something had come up and asked her to release the date. She offered me a small refund. I accepted without fuss. Then the band, the DJ, the rentals, the photographer, and the venue coordinator. With each cancellation, another piece of the wedding dissolved. Another weight left my shoulders. Another thread connecting me to that house snapped clean. By noon, the entire wedding had been dismantled. Quietly, legally, professionally, everything I had personally arranged was undone. Everything they assumed they controlled was gone. My phone exploded around 1 p.m., my mother calling 5 times within a minute, my father, Elise, and finally Dorian. I didn't answer any of them. Not yet. I needed the silence. I needed the separation. I needed the reminder that my life was mine. By late afternoon, I stepped outside onto the walkway behind my building. A few golden leaves clung to the trees. The air smelled faintly like rain. I breathed in and out, slow and steady. Peace wasn't loud. It was subtle. It was soft. It was choosing yourself in small, undeniable ways. Around 4 p.m., the door to my building opened and my neighbor Shirley stepped out with a bag of groceries. Her face softened when she saw me. "Long day?" she asked gently. "Long month," I corrected. She didn't pry. She didn't ask for details. She simply handed me a warm paper bag. "Cinnamon rolls," she said. "Fresh batch. Eat one before you talk to anyone." That small moment of kindness almost undid me, almost. But instead, it reminded me of something I had forgotten. There were people in the world who gave without taking, people who showed up without expecting anything in return, people unlike my family. I thanked her, took the bag upstairs, and sat on my sofa with a cinnamon roll and my buzzing phone beside me. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I could imagine exactly what the messages said. Accusations, guilt-tripping, demands, panic. None of which mattered anymore. That night, I slept more deeply than I had in months. No alarms, no mental checklists, no emotional debts waiting to be paid, just darkness and breathing and rest. The next morning was calm, quiet, beautiful in the most ordinary way, and that was when the voicemail came in, the one that told me exactly how quickly the wedding was beginning to collapse without me. Then my mother. "This isn't funny. Fix it." Then my father. "You're being ridiculous. Fix this now." And finally, Dorian. "Fix this or don't come back home." That was when I smiled. Slow, sad, certain. Because they still didn't understand. I wasn't coming back. Not then, not ever. And the collapse of the Hart wedding had only just begun. The morning the wedding truly began to fall apart wasn't loud on my end. It didn't arrive with panic or dread or the instinct to rush in and fix everything like I used to. It arrived in the form of sunlight streaming across my kitchen counter, a calm so steady it almost felt unreal, and a voicemail inbox filling itself with proof that my absence was the loudest presence I had ever had in that family. I stood barefoot on the cold tile floor, warming my hands around a mug of tea, listening to my mother's first message, sharp, frantic, dripping with the entitlement she'd worn like perfume my entire life. "Luna," she snapped. "The florist says you canceled the order. Call them back, now." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with indignation, like she couldn't fathom a world where I had agency or the nerve to use it. Before the message finished, another one started. My father this time, breathless like he'd jogged across the venue. "The band isn't coming. The caterer says the contract was canceled. What on earth did you do?" A beat of silence followed, then, "Fix this before people arrive." People. Not family, not loved ones, not guests, people. An audience they needed to impress more than they ever needed to respect me. I set the phone down, took a slow sip of tea, and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. A quiet pride. Not spite, not revenge, not cruelty. Just the profound calm of someone no longer willing to be used. Then came Dorian's message, the one that finally revealed just how deep the cracks ran. "You ruined everything," he hissed. "Fix this, or don't bother coming back home. Actually, don't come back at all." The irony almost made me laugh. Don't come back. As if he hadn't watched me pack and leave the night before. As if I would ever step into that house again. Once the tea was gone, I stepped onto my balcony, letting the warm breeze brush against my face. Somewhere across town, my family was scrambling, panicking, blaming me for the collapse that only existed because they built everything on top of me. They didn't know how to function without someone quietly holding their world together. They never learned. Why would they? I never let them fail before, but this time, failure wasn't mine to prevent. Shirley texted me mid-morning. "You okay? I made extra muffins. You want some?" I replied, "Maybe later," and sat on the balcony railing watching the city move steadily forward. Cars passing, birds cutting across the sky, neighbors chatting downstairs. And life continued, unaffected by the implosion happening not far from me. A strange thought hit me then. This is what freedom feels like. Not loud, not glamorous, not triumphant. Still, ordinary. Quiet enough for me to hear myself think clearly for the first time in years. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. I ignored it. Then again, ignored. Then again, ignored. But when the voicemail icon flashed, I pressed play, almost idly, and the chaos spilled into my calm like an unintentional confession. It was Elise's mother first, her voice thin and embarrassed. "We're at the venue and nothing's set up. Is there a backup plan?" Then Elise herself, breathless. "The guests are here, and there's no food. The coordinator says the account was closed. Luna, please just pick up." A soft, almost amused exhale left me. Even now, even after everything they said to me, I felt bad for her. Not because of the wedding collapsing, but because she was marrying into a family that treated love like a currency to be earned and loyalty like a debt to be collected. Then came a message from someone I didn't expect. My Aunt Lynn. "Sweetheart, what's happening over there? Your mother is in hysterics." I deleted it instantly. The hysterics weren't my problem anymore. By 1 p.m., the unraveling was complete. As if on cue, someone sent me a photo. A distant relative, probably hoping for gossip. It was the venue. Empty tables, no flowers. Guests standing around, confused. Dorian in the center, red-faced and furious, Elise crying, my mother pacing, my father arguing with the venue staff, and all of it, the mess, the embarrassment, the chaos, was the natural consequence of a truth they had always refused to accept. I was the only one holding everything together, not because I was the eldest, not because I was responsible, but because they took and I gave, and I didn't know how to stop until now. Around 2 p.m., my manager called to check on a project deadline, and when I picked up, my voice was calm, steady, professional, like nothing in my world was on fire, because truthfully, nothing of mine was. The fire belonged entirely to them. When we hung up, I glanced at my reflection in the dark window. I didn't look triumphant, I didn't look vengeful, I looked lighter. Like someone who finally understood she wasn't obligated to stay in places that demanded her silence. Then another voicemail came in, my father again, voice subdued, cracking in places I'd never heard. "Una, please call us. We don't know what to do. Everyone is leaving." Not once did he say, "We're sorry." Not once did he say, "You didn't deserve what we said." Not once did he acknowledge the real reason everything fell apart. They weren't calling because they loved me. They were calling because they needed me. And those were never the same thing. At 4 p.m., I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I curled up on my couch with a blanket and let the afternoon sun warm my legs. Outside, distant traffic hummed, a dog barked, a neighbor played soft music, and the world, my world, remained steady. Their wedding was collapsing, their expectations were collapsing, their hierarchy was collapsing, and I was just beginning. By the time the venue descended into full-scale meltdown, I was sitting cross-legged on my couch, laptop open, finishing a branding mock-up for a client who actually respected my time. It was almost poetic. While my family's chaos spun itself into a hurricane, my life finally felt like a soft breeze. But the universe has a wicked sense of timing, because just as I hit export, my phone vibrated with a notification I wasn't expecting. A text from Elise, not angry, not hysterical, not blaming me, just 4 words that made me pause. Are you safe, Luna? Safe. A word no one in my family had ever used with me. Not when I burned out working double shifts, not when I cried quietly in my room after being dismissed, not when I canceled an entire $40,000 0-cents contract to keep their store from collapsing. Elise's text wasn't an apology, but it was the first message from anyone in that wedding orbit that wasn't built on entitlement. I didn't reply. Not because I hated her, but because responding would have pulled me right back into the gravitational pull I had just escaped. Instead, I set my phone aside and walked into my tiny kitchen. I opened the window. Fresh air drifted in, carrying the scent of someone grilling on a balcony 2 floors below. It was simple, peaceful, alive. Everything my childhood home had never been, but peace still felt foreign, like trying on a coat that didn't quite fit yet. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. That's when my phone began vibrating again, not with calls this time, but with message previews popping up in rapid-fire bursts. Your mother is crying. Why did you cancel everything? Please call us. This is a disaster. The entire family is talking about you. Do you realize what you've done? This is humiliating. They loved that word. They used it like a leash, tugging me back in whenever I dared to stand upright. For years, the threat of embarrassing the family kept me quiet, obedient, grateful for scraps of affection. But humiliation loses its power when you stop living for the approval of people who never thought you were enough in the first place. I turned my phone face down and breathed out slowly. Outside, the sun dipped lower, throwing orange light across my kitchen walls. For once, the world felt still, not because everything was resolved, but because I had finally stopped trying to fix what was never mine to fix. Then came the knock. Sharp, repeated, insistent. It pulled me from the kitchen before my brain even caught up. My heart kicked into my ribs, not fear, instinct. The instinct of someone who grew up being ambushed by sudden disapproval, sudden demands, sudden explosions, disguised as family conversations. I walked to the door and checked the peephole. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't Dorian. It was my Aunt Lynn. The one person in that entire bloodline who could look you in the eyes without trying to extract something. I opened the door only halfway. She stood there holding a handbag pressed to her chest, her face pulled tight with something between concern and exhaustion. "Can I come in?" she asked. The old version of me, trained to accommodate, trained to never say no, rose instinctively. But the new version of me, the one who had slept peacefully for the first time in years, gently pushed her aside. "Why are you here?" I asked. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath all morning. "Your mother is unraveling. The wedding collapsed," I finished. "Yes," she whispered, "and they're blaming you." "Of course they are." She hesitated. "Did you really cancel everything?" "I didn't cancel their wedding," I said calmly. "I canceled what I paid for, what I built, what I held together." She swallowed hard. "They're saying you sabotaged it," I almost laughed. Funny how the word sabotage only comes up when I stop being useful. She closed her eyes for a moment, not in judgment, in resignation. Like she had known, deep down, this was how it would end. Your mother said something unforgivable, she said finally. She said a lot of things, I replied. No, Lynn insisted softly. She told the entire extended family that losing you was the best gift she could give Dorian. My breath didn't hitch. My heart didn't plunge. I didn't shatter. The words hit, but they landed on armor that had been forming for years. I crossed my arms. So she meant it, I said. Lynn looked at me with an ache I didn't expect. She's losing control, Luna, and she's pulling everyone down with her. Control. That was the thread connecting everything. My canceled contract, the wedding, the store, the favoritism, the venom disguised as parental concern. My mother's power didn't come from nurturing, it came from ownership. But that ownership ended the moment I walked out the night before. Lynn stepped closer. Your father is furious. Dorian is, well, Dorian. But Elise, she's devastated. That one stung unexpectedly, because Elise was the only person in that equation who had ever treated me like I mattered. But devastation is not the same as innocence. She had watched the way they used me. She had watched them pile everything on my shoulders. She had watched me burn out trying to make their day perfect. And she said nothing. Being silent in the presence of cruelty doesn't make you a victim. It makes you an accomplice. Why are you here, Lynn? I asked again. She looked down. To see if you're coming home. Home, I repeated. The word felt like ash. That was never my home. She looked up quickly. Luna, for years, I said, my voice steady, I was the helper, the fixer, the daughter who made things happen quietly so Dorian could shine loudly. And the moment I couldn't give any more, I lifted my chin. They wished I'd disappear. Lynn didn't argue. She didn't try to defend them. She just nodded, slowly, painfully, because she knew it was the truth. So no, I said, I'm not coming back. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, they'll spiral without you. They already are, I said, and that's not my emergency to solve. She stepped back, defeated. I'll tell them nothing, I replied. Let them sit with the silence. It's the only thing they ever gave me. Lynn blinked hard, fighting tears. Not guilt, not manipulation, real sadness. But even then, I didn't bend. She left quietly and I closed the door gently behind her. The click echoed through my apartment, a soft, final sound. Not an ending, a beginning. The hours after Aunt Lynn left were strangely calm, the kind of calm that feels almost suspicious, like the quiet before a storm that already knows your name. I sat on my living room floor with my back against the couch, letting the silence settle into my bones. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for footsteps, a slam door, or my name being called in that disappointed tone my mother perfected over the years. Instead, my phone buzzed softly against the hardwood. Not calls, just notifications. I ignored them until one preview appeared that made my stomach tighten. Call me, please. It was from Elise. Not angry, not guilt-laden. Just 2 words, so unlike anything my family had said to me in months that for a moment I forgot how to breathe. But I didn't call her back. I set the phone aside and pushed myself up to make tea, my hand steady even though my heart wasn't. The kettle hummed softly, steam curling into the air like something cleansing. While it boiled, I thought about Elise, how she used to ask me quietly if I was okay during wedding planning, how she would notice the tension stacking on my shoulders even when Dorian didn't. But she never stepped in, she never said stop, she never said enough. Sympathy without action is just decoration, and I had decorated enough people's lives. The kettle clicked off and I poured the water over the tea bag, letting the steam fog my glasses. I took a slow sip and sat by the window, knees pulled up to my chest. Outside, the sky stretched wide and golden, dusk softening everything it touched. Then my phone buzzed again. A voicemail. My thumb hovered over the screen before curiosity won. I pressed play. "Luna? It's me." Elise's voice cracked on the second word. "I don't know what happened." "Everyone is panicking. The venue says nothing was paid. The florist said the order was canceled. Dorian is blaming you for everything, and your parents," she inhaled shakily, "they're saying terrible things. But Luna, please, just tell me what's going on." I closed the voicemail and let the quiet wrap around me again. She didn't deserve the full truth yet, not before she acknowledged her part in the damage. I set the phone face down on the table and let myself breathe. For once, the story wasn't mine to hold together. That evening, the sun sank beyond the buildings, painting my apartment walls in dim amber. I ordered takeout, curled up on the couch, and let the city noise fill the spaces where my family's demands used to live. Around 9:00 p.m., my phone buzzed again, this time with a name I hadn't seen in a long time. Aunt Patricia, the family echo chamber's loudest voice. I didn't answer, but her voicemail spilled across my speaker anyway when curiosity once again betrayed me. "Luna, your mother is hysterical. They say you abandoned the wedding and left everyone humiliated. You need to fix this. You know how sensitive your mother is." And Dorian, he's practically in shock. He said the guests are calling it the most embarrassing wedding they've ever attended. I didn't smile, but the smallest, faintest feeling of relief whispered in my chest, not because I wanted them to suffer, but because, for the first time, they were experiencing the weight of their own choices without me there to cushion the blow. The next morning arrived, bright and cool. I made breakfast slowly, toast, eggs, strawberries I'd bought the day before. Everything felt simple, clean, mine. I glanced at my phone. 17 missed calls, 7 texts, 2 voicemails. I turned it face down again. Instead, I opened my laptop and dove into work. Logo drafts, color palettes, a website rebuild I'd been hired for months ago but never had time to complete because wedding emergencies kept swallowing my schedule. My productivity bloomed. Not anxious, not frantic, focused. Every hour spent working was a piece of my life stitched back together. At noon, I stepped out onto the balcony, stretching in the warm sun. That's when the downstairs neighbor waved up at me. "You look lighter today," she said. I smiled, surprised at how genuine it felt. "I am." She nodded knowingly, like someone who understood escape. Later that afternoon, I checked my phone again. A single message caught my eye, not because of who sent it, but because of the tone. It was from Mason. "You good?" 2 words, no assumptions, no guilt, no pressure. I typed back, "Yeah." "Actually, yeah," he responded instantly. "Proud of you." I didn't realize until then how much those 3 words mattered. Proud of you. Something my parents had never said to me in my entire life. I sat down on the couch and let that feeling wash over me, warm and steady. But peace has a funny way of sharing space with clarity, and clarity whispered a truth I'd avoided for years. I had spent my entire adult life trying to prove myself to people who only valued me when I was useful. My absence had caused more disruption than my presence ever had. That alone was proof that I was the backbone of a family that didn't deserve the spine I offered them. I picked up my phone, opened my messages, and scrolled through the chaos of missed calls and frantic texts. None of them asked if I was okay. None of them apologized. None of them said they wanted to talk. They just wanted to fix the disaster I refused to hold together this time. I deleted the entire thread. Not out of anger, out of liberation. Then I opened my laptop and drafted an email to my clients. My schedule is fully open for the next 2 months. Please feel free to assign additional work. The replies came quickly. Absolutely, glad to have you back, sending over a contract tonight. Every message felt like another step away from the chains I had carried since childhood. As evening arrived, I lit a candle and sat cross-legged on my living room rug, letting its soft glow fill the room. My apartment was quiet. My heart was quiet. For the first time in forever, both silence and solitude felt like companions instead of punishment. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and breathed. Not heavy, not frantic, just steady. The wedding was ruined. My parents were furious. My brother's perfect day had collapsed in front of the entire town. And me, for the first time in my life, I was finally free. The morning after the wedding collapsed, I woke to sunlight spilling across my sheets like the universe had decided to gently tap my shoulder and say, "You can breathe now." For a moment, I forgot there was chaos unfolding several miles away. Forgot about the voicemails, the accusations, the unraveling of a family that had always expected me to be their net. Instead, I lay still, listening to the quiet hum of my apartment, the soft rustle of leaves outside, and the steady rhythm of my own breathing. My life, my real life, was finally beginning. I made coffee, strong and warm, letting the aroma fill the kitchen. I took my mug to the balcony and curled my legs under myself, savoring the calm. It was strange how peaceful the world felt while my family was probably pacing through a disaster of their own making. My phone, face down on the counter, buzzed once. Then again. I ignored it. I wasn't ready to let their noise reclaim the space I had finally carved out of silence. Around 9 a.m., I finally checked it. Not because I wanted to, but because curiosity has sharp little teeth. 21 missed calls, 5 voicemails, a dozen texts, and all of them told the same story in different shades of desperation. The first voicemail was from my mother, her voice thin with panic. "Luna, the guests are leaving. They're saying we didn't pay anyone. Fix this now." The second was my father, his tone sharp and clipped. "This embarrassment is on you. Get here now. Do something." The third was Dorian, and I didn't need to press play to know anger would be dripping off every syllable. I deleted all 3 without listening, not out of cruelty, out of self-preservation. I had spent years swallowing their demands, absorbing their disappointment, softening myself to their sharp edges. Not today. My phone buzzed again. A text from Elise. "Please, Luna. I don't know what's happening. I need to talk to you." I didn't reply. My loyalty had always been expected, never earned. I wasn't going to revert back into their emergency contact just because their choices had finally caught up to them. Instead, I showered, dressed slowly, and went to my desk to work on upcoming client projects, logos, branding concepts, social media campaigns. My work, the thing I had built alone, without applause, without parental safety nets, felt grounding in a way my family never had. Around noon, my stomach growled, so I walked to the cafe below my building. On the way back, I saw a familiar name flash across my screen. Aunt Lynn. Not calling this time, just texting. "Your parents are saying awful things about you. Your brother is telling everyone you sabotaged the wedding out of jealousy. But I know better. If you ever need a neutral ear, I'm here." I paused, the bag of pastries warm against my palm. I typed "thank you" and hit send. It was the first message I'd replied to since leaving the house. Back upstairs, I ate at my desk, savoring the quiet. There was no yelling upstairs, no demands, no footsteps stomping through hallways, no passive-aggressive comments. Just me, my food, and the peace of a life I'd almost forgotten I was allowed to have. And then my phone rang again. I nearly ignored it until I saw the name. Grandma Ruth, the only person in my family who had ever loved me gently. I answered, "Hi, Grandma." Her sigh filled the line like a soft wind. "Sweetheart, what happened?" I sank into my chair. "They told me the best gift I could give the family was disappearing." She exhaled sharply. I'm 78, not senile. I know your parents, I know Dorian, I know exactly how they talk to you. My throat tightened. I just couldn't do it anymore. Good, she said firmly. You shouldn't. I blinked. Of all the reactions I expected, that wasn't one of them. Sweetheart, your mom called me this morning crying, not because she hurt you, because the wedding fell apart. She still doesn't understand what she did. My heart fell a little. I wanted to believe she was capable of real reflection, but that hope had been crushed too many times. And your father, Grandma continued, kept saying you ruined his son's big day. His son. As if you aren't also his child. I wiped the corner of my eye. I'm sorry they dragged you into it. They didn't drag me, she said. I stepped in. I told them, you owe them nothing. And I meant it. A warmth spread in my chest. Grandma, listen to me, she said, voice firming. Start your new life. Don't you dare look back. They made their choices. Now you get to make yours. After we hung up, I stood by the window for a long time, watching soft clouds drift across the sky. I hadn't realized how deeply I needed someone, anyone, to simply acknowledge that I wasn't crazy, ungrateful, or dramatic. That validation didn't heal everything, but it softened something jagged inside me. Hours passed. I answered emails, cleaned my apartment, rearranged some plants, and then something happened I hadn't expected. My phone stopped buzzing. No calls, no texts, no voicemails, just silence. It was eerie, but also relieving, like they'd finally run out of ways to pull me back in. Around sunset, the sky burning with streaks of orange and red, there was a soft knock at my door. My stomach tightened. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I found a small cardboard box sitting on the welcome mat. No name, no note, no return address. I brought it inside carefully, heart thudding, and opened it. Inside was the planner I had used for all the wedding arrangements. Neatly placed on top was a single sheet of paper. My name, nothing else. I flipped the planner open. Every page was blank. Every timeline, every detail, every hour I had poured into their wedding, erased. My breath caught, not in panic, in clarity. They hadn't sent me the planner out of kindness. They had sent it to say, you're no longer part of this family. Your work is nothing. Your existence doesn't matter. But they were wrong about all of it. I closed the planner and placed it gently in the trash. Then I washed my hands, made dinner, and sat down to eat in the quiet glow of my apartment. And for the first time in my life, I truly felt untouchable. I woke the next morning to a feeling I couldn't name at first. A sensation like my lungs had finally expanded fully after years of shallow breathing. The apartment was quiet, warm, wrapped in an unfamiliar calm that made me realize just how loud my childhood home had always been. The silence wasn't empty. It was restorative, a kind of silence that settles into your bones and whispers, you survived. I made breakfast slowly, savoring every movement as if reclaiming pieces of myself with each step. The sound of eggs sizzling in the pan, the soft clink of my fork on the plate, the low hum of my kettle, it all felt like a quiet declaration that I was building a life on my own terms now. Halfway through eating, my phone lit up again, but not with the desperate chaos from yesterday. This time, it was a single message from Mason. You good? 2 words, no assumptions, no guilt, no demands. I typed back, breathing easier today. He replied almost instantly, I'm proud of you. It was strange how those 4 words felt heavier, more meaningful than anything my parents had said my entire life. After I finished eating, I went for a walk through the park near my building. Morning joggers passed, dogs tugged at leashes, children chased each other along the path. Life moved as though the world hadn't shifted for me the night before. But I felt the shift. It lived in the way my shoulders no longer curled inward, in the way I walked without bracing for impact, in the way I didn't check my phone every 5 minutes, fearing another emotional ambush. The universe didn't look different, but I finally felt like I belonged inside it. I stopped at a bench overlooking the pond, letting the breeze brush across my face. That's when another message arrived. Not from my parents, not from Dorian, but from someone unexpected, Elise. "I need to understand what happened," her message read. "Please." I stared at the screen for a long moment. She had never been cruel, never dismissive. Her eyes at the dinner table, wide, startled, had told me she'd been blindsided by my mother's venom just as much as I had. I typed slowly, "Your wedding fell apart because I withdrew everything I personally paid for." I didn't sabotage anything. I simply stopped carrying the weight they dumped on me. 3 dots appeared. Then, "I didn't know. I should have helped stop it. I'm sorry." I sat there, phone in hand, feeling something loose, not forgiveness exactly, just acknowledgement. And sometimes acknowledgement is the rarest kind of relief. I pocketed my phone and started walking again, letting the sun warm my skin. Hours later, when I returned home, a different kind of message waited. This time an email from the florist. "Hi Luna, I wanted to personally thank you for being honest about your situation. Your family has contacted us demanding refunds and threatening legal action. We just wanted you to know we won't be giving them a cent. You handled everything with professionalism and grace. If you ever need arrangements in the future, wedding or otherwise, we'd be honored." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I did both, quietly, leaning against my kitchen counter, because for the first time, someone saw the full picture and chose my side without hesitation. That afternoon, I immersed myself in work, not as an escape, but as an act of reclaiming my identity. I drafted proposals, polished a client's branding package, sketched out designs. My brain felt sharp again, alive again, unburdened. And then, unexpectedly, a call came in. The number was local, but unfamiliar. I hesitated, then answered. "Is this Luna Hart?" a woman asked, her tone professional. "Yes. My name is Rebecca. I am the coordinator at the Lakeside venue. I'm calling about the Hart Grant wedding." For a brief second, my chest tightened, expecting blame, but instead she said, "I wanted to inform you that your parents attempted to dispute the cancellation charges. We reviewed all documentation and noted that every contract was signed by you alone." I nodded to myself. "That's correct. They claimed you acted without their consent. But your emails, receipts, and payment history tell a different story. We just wanted to let you know the dispute was denied." Relief washed over me, steady and warm. "Thank you for calling. And, if I may," she added gently, "I've seen a lot of family weddings. What you did, that wasn't sabotage. That was self-protection." When she hung up, I sat in stunned silence, because validation from a stranger shouldn't mean that much. But it did. It did because for the first time, someone who had witnessed the fallout saw the truth clearly. Around 6 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "You think you're better than us?" I didn't recognize the sender, but the tone was unmistakable. A relative. Maybe Aunt Melissa or Cousin Gina. It didn't matter. Another message came. "Your brother is devastated. Your parents are humiliated. This is all your fault." I blocked the number, then made dinner. Peace doesn't require explanation, it just requires boundaries. The evening deepened around me, the sky turning pink, then violet, then navy as the city lights blinked awake. I opened my balcony door, letting the cool air drift in. And that's when a memory surfaced. Unwelcome. Sharp. The night Dorian got into law school. The way my parents cried with pride, hugging him in the kitchen. And me, I was the one behind the camera, capturing their joy while no one noticed the acceptance letter I'd received the same day to a graduate program. I'd tucked mine away in a drawer. Tonight, though, I didn't tuck anything away. Tonight, I stood on my balcony, watching the world stretch open in front of me, and finally, let myself feel proud of the woman I'd become without their approval. The last message of the night came just as I stepped back inside. It was from Grandma Ruth again. "Sweetheart, I'm thinking of you. I hope you're feeling lighter. Call me anytime." I pressed a hand over my heart. "I am lighter," I whispered to myself. And for the first time in my life, it was true. The next morning arrived soft and gray, the kind of light that makes everything look gentler than it really is. I woke before my alarm, not because of anxiety, but because my body had finally stopped bracing for the next crisis. I stretched beneath the blankets, listening to the quiet hum of my new life, my fridge clicking on, the faint buzz of traffic blocks away, the muffled footsteps of the neighbor upstairs. Ordinary sounds, but to me they felt like proof that peace could exist without being earned through suffering. I made coffee slowly, intentionally, letting the warmth of the mug seep through my hands as if it could stitch together the last frayed edges inside me. I was halfway through my first sip when my phone buzzed, not with chaos this time, but with an email notification. The sender's name froze me for half a heartbeat. Heart Family Group, a family thread, one I had been forced into for years. For a moment, I didn't open it. I just stared at the screen, feeling the echo of old instincts tug at me. The fear of disappointing them, the dread of familiar accusations, the weight of being the family's shock absorber. But then I remembered the quiet that had filled my apartment last night. The way it felt like stepping into sunlight after years of standing in a hallway with no windows. I opened the email. It was short, frantic, and written by someone who had clearly been crying while typing. It was from Elise. "I know you don't owe any of us anything," she wrote, "but I need you to know your brother is telling people you purposely destroyed his wedding to hurt him. The truth is spreading differently depending on who tells it. I just wanted you to have a heads up." I sighed, not from pain, but from exhaustion at how predictable it all was. Dorian had always rewritten reality to suit him, and my parents followed whatever version framed him as the innocent party. For years, I'd tried defending myself, explaining myself, shrinking myself to fit the narrative that kept the household running. But now, the truth didn't need defending, it just needed distance. I typed back a simple response. "Thank you for letting me know. I hope you find peace too. No accusation, no bitterness, just closure." After sending it, I set my phone aside and opened my laptop to review a client proposal. My focus sharpened quickly, maybe sharper than it ever had, because the background noise of emotional chaos was gone. For the first time in years, my brain wasn't navigating a minefield of family expectations while trying to function. Work flowed easily, cleanly, like a river finally unblocked. Around noon, I decided to step out for groceries. The grocery store had become one of my favorite places in Asheville. Calm, warm, filled with people minding their own business. I was halfway down the produce aisle choosing avocados when my phone buzzed again. I considered ignoring it, but glanced at the screen. A voicemail from my father. My jaw tightened. I didn't press play immediately. I finished my shopping first, checked out, drove home, carried my bags inside. Only when everything was neatly put away, when I'd reclaimed a sense of stability, did I sit on the edge of my bed and press play. My father's voice filled the silence, except it wasn't the booming, authoritative tone I grew up with. It was small, strained. "Luna, it's your dad." He paused for several seconds, as if he wasn't sure how to continue. Then, "Your mother isn't well." A familiar manipulation tactic, but then he said something that made my chest tighten, not with guilt, but with clarity. "She keeps saying you abandon us. She keeps pacing around the house saying this family is falling apart because of you." He exhaled shakily. "I don't know how to talk to her. I don't know how to fix any of this." I waited for the next part, the demand, the blame, the command disguised as a plea. And there it was. "We need you to come home." Not, "Can we talk?" Not, "We're sorry." Not, "We want to make things right." Just another expectation, another responsibility, another burden they believed I was still obligated to carry. I replayed the voicemail once, then again, and a third time. And by the end, something inside me felt still. Because for the first time, I heard what had always been underneath my parents' voices. They didn't want connection. They wanted control. They didn't want healing. They wanted access. They didn't want me. They wanted what I could give them, and I was done giving. I placed my phone on the bed beside me and stared at the ceiling, realizing something profound. They weren't collapsing because I left. They were collapsing because they never knew how to stand on their own. All those years, I thought I was the weak one for craving love, for hoping they'd notice me, for bending until I nearly snapped. But I was the strong one. I had always been the strong one. I got up, walked to my desk, and wrote out a response, not to send, but for myself. A reminder, I am not responsible for the consequences of boundaries I needed to survive. The moment the last word left my pen, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Mason. "Hey," his text said, "want to grab dinner tonight, somewhere with terrible lighting and great pie?" I smiled. A real smile, because this was someone who invited me, not demanded me. Someone who saw me, not used me. Someone whose presence felt warm, not heavy. "Yes," I typed, "pick me up at 7. After sending it, I took a slow breath and looked around my apartment. My plants, my books, my artwork. The soft throw blanket on my couch. My space, my peace, my life. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I felt like I was finally running toward something. Something good, something whole, something entirely mine. And I wasn't going back. Not now, not ever. Dinner with Mason that night wasn't extravagant or dramatic or life-altering in the way movies love to depict. Instead, it was soft, a gentle unraveling of the tightness I'd carried for years. We chose a tiny diner tucked between a bookstore and a tailor shop, a place that felt comfortably outdated with its flickering neon sign and caramel-colored booths. Mason slid into the seat across from me, offering that warm, steady smile that always made me feel like the world was less sharp than it used to be. "You look lighter," he said, not as a compliment but as an observation, accurate and simple. I shrugged, stirring the ice in my water. Maybe I finally stopped carrying things that weren't mine. He nodded slowly. Funny how heavy borrowed burdens can get. The waitress arrived with menus, her hair pinned with mismatched clips, her voice easy and familiar. I found myself laughing when Mason joked about ordering every slice of pie on the menu, and for a moment the weight of everything I had left behind didn't exist. But it was still there, below the surface, waiting. When the food arrived, he watched me for a moment before speaking. "You listened to the voicemail," he said gently. Not a question, a knowing. I nodded, cutting a piece of my sandwich I wasn't sure I could swallow. "They're unraveling," I said quietly, "and they want me to stitch everything back together." "And are you going to?" Mason asked, not judgmental, not hopeful, just curious. I set down my fork and folded my arms on the table, staring at the swirling surface of my water. "The old me would have gone running," I said. "The old me would have apologized for wounds I didn't cause. I would have believed their crisis was my responsibility to fix." Mason leaned forward, his voice low. "But you're not her anymore." I let that sink in, because he was right, I wasn't. I swallowed hard, then whispered, "I'm not going back." After dinner, he walked me to my door, the summer night warm enough to feel like a blanket. He didn't try to fix anything. He didn't push. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, and said, "If you ever feel the urge to doubt yourself, call me first. I'll remind you who you've become." I smiled, feeling that warmth settle in my chest. "Thank you." Once inside, I changed into soft clothes and curled on the couch with a blanket over my legs. My phone sat on the coffee table, the screen dark, silent. I didn't reach for it. I lit a small candle, the scent of cedarwood filling the room. I watched the flame sway gently, listened to the hum of the air conditioner, let the stillness wrap around me. The quiet didn't feel empty, it felt earned. Halfway through the evening, my phone buzzed once, then stopped. I didn't check. I wasn't ready to let their crisis pierce the peace I had built in just a few short days. Instead, I grabbed my notebook, a habit I had abandoned years ago because I was always too busy fixing everyone else's chaos to write my own thought. I wrote one sentence, the same one that crystallized in me earlier that week: I do not exist to be consumed. Then I underlined it twice. Around midnight, I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and crawled into bed. The sheets were cool, the pillows soft, the quiet comforting. Just as I was drifting toward sleep, another buzz rattled the nightstand. I sighed and reached for it, expecting another voicemail from my father. But the name on the screen wasn't his. It was Ashley. For a moment, I simply stared. My sister had always been a shadow I chased, effortlessly loved, effortlessly praised, effortlessly defended. The girl who never had to ask for anything, because everything was handed to her without question. Seeing her name brought an unexpected pang. Not anger, not longing, but something softer and more complicated. I pressed play. Her voice cracked immediately. "Luna, I don't know what to say," she inhaled shakily. "Mom and Dad are losing it. They're blaming you for everything. They won't stop talking about the wedding falling apart and how you abandoned them." She paused, a quiet sob. "But I get it now." I blinked. Once, twice. I get what it's like to be expected to carry everyone. I get what it's like to be punished for setting boundaries. Her breathing trembled. "And so I'm sorry for all the years I never saw what they did to you. I was too busy being the daughter they wanted, and now I see how much that cost you." The voicemail ended without a request, without blame, without manipulation, just honesty. I lay back in bed, phone resting on my chest. I didn't cry. This wasn't a moment of reunion or forgiveness, it was an acknowledgement of truth, and that was enough. For the first time in my life, I felt something like closure with her. Not because she asked for it, but because she finally saw the part of me that had been invisible for so long. I set my phone aside and turned off the lamp. The darkness settled gently, my breathing slowed, my heartbeat steadied. Before sleep took me, a simple realization slipped quietly into place. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation. I didn't need my parents to suddenly change. All I needed was this peace, this space, this life I was finally building without them. And in that moment, soft, quiet, ordinary, I realized I had finally become the woman I always hoped I'd grow into. Not because they loved me, not because they accepted me, but because I finally chose myself. The morning after Ashley's voicemail, I woke up before sunrise, the soft blue light pouring into my bedroom like the world was starting over just for me. I lay there for a few minutes, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside and realizing something I hadn't felt in years. My body wasn't tense, my jaw wasn't clenched, my chest wasn't tight. Peace didn't feel foreign anymore. It felt earned. I made coffee, wrapped myself in a cardigan, and stepped onto the balcony. The dawn air tasted cold and clean. For a long time, I just stood there, letting the warmth from the mug sink into my palms. Somewhere across the state, my parents were waking up in a home I no longer recognized, surrounded by consequences they spent years pretending could never touch them. For once, that reality didn't pull at me. It didn't demand anything from me. It simply existed without sitting on my shoulder. The shift was quiet but absolute. After finishing my coffee, I opened my laptop. I had dozens of emails waiting in my life. These transpired in my credit cards and outlining upcoming campaigns and drafting proposals. The world, it seemed, hadn't ended because I stopped holding my family together. It had gotten bigger, brighter, more spacious. I spent the morning reviewing contracts, outlining upcoming campaigns, and drafting proposals. Work flowed easily. My mind was clear. Around noon, Mason texted me, "Lunch? My treat. You deserve good food and bad jokes." I smirked and texted back a single word, "Fine." We met at a small brick-walled restaurant with soft music and an owner who greeted Mason like a regular. He held out a chair for me, and I slid into it, grateful for the comfort of someone who didn't want anything from me except my honesty. "So," he said, leaning back, "how does it feel being the main character of your own life instead of the supporting character in theirs?" I rolled my eyes but couldn't hide my smile. "Unsettling, liberating, like stepping onto a stage I built myself." He nodded. "And how does it feel being unreachable to your parents?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I traced the edge of my water glass, watching a droplet slide down the side. Surprisingly, quiet. "Quiet is good," Mason replied. "Quiet means there's room now for joy, for growth, for people who actually deserve you." The waitress arrived with our food before I could respond. We ate slowly, talking about work, about Asheville, about nothing and everything. When lunch was over, Mason walked me to my car. "If they show up again," he said, "you call me. I won't let you face them alone." I nodded, feeling that familiar warmth settle behind my ribs. "Thank you," I murmured, "for not treating this like drama." "It's not drama," he replied. "It's your life, and you're finally living it." The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. I went grocery shopping, picked up fresh flowers, cleaned my apartment, and did all the small, simple things that build a life worth keeping. Every action felt intentional, like a thread weaving me further away from the place I'd escaped and deeper into the person I was becoming. That evening, as I lit a candle on my kitchen counter, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. I didn't recognize the number. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Then something nudged me to press play. Ashley's voice filled the room, but this time she wasn't crying. She sounded steady. "Luna, I wanted to tell you something. I moved out." My breath caught. "I packed my things this morning and left the house. Mom tried to stop me, but I'm done. I'm tired of being the daughter they shape instead of the daughter I want to be." She exhaled shakily. "You were right to leave, and I want you to know I'm proud of you." Proud in a way Mom and Dad never understood. Silence. Then, softly, "I hope one day you'll let me be in your life again, even if it's slowly, even if it's later. I'll wait. I love you." The voicemail ended and I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling something break and mend in the same moment. I didn't reply. Not yet. Boundaries were still necessary and healing wasn't instant. But for the first time, I felt a door open that hadn't been there before. A door built not from guilt or obligation, but from choice. The night settled softly around me. I made tea, curled up on the couch, and let the warmth seep into my bones. I thought about everything that had cracked open in the past weeks. The wedding collapse, the store failing, my parents losing their grip on the world they thought they controlled. But none of that defined me anymore. What defined me was the peace of my quiet apartment, the glow of the candle, the softness of the blanket around my legs, the steadiness of my breath, the realization that life, real life, had finally begun. I closed my eyes and whispered, not to my parents, not to Dorian, not to the version of me who lived small for years, but to the woman I was now. You made it out. Later, as I got into bed, I thought about something Mason once told me. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is walk away without burning the bridge, just letting it collapse behind you because you aren't holding it up anymore. That's exactly what happened. I didn't destroy my family. I simply stopped sacrificing myself to keep their world upright. They were never my responsibility. My life was. My future was. My happiness was. And finally, those things belonged only to me. As I drifted towards sleep, the last thought that crossed my mind was simple, steady, and full of truth. I wasn't the daughter they wanted, but I became the woman I needed, and that was more than enough.